And after playing 18 games through the regular season, 3 playoff games, we have finally made it here to Super Bowl Sunday. This is Snap the Pigskin. I'm Noah Clark. We got a great show for you. We're going to go very quickly today on our show for the Super Bowl. Got a lot of stuff. Sorry I haven't been able to drop a lot of episodes lately. Been very busy with other life stuff going on, but I'll hopefully get this episode out to you guys as quickly as possible before Super Bowl Sunday. So let's get into it. Let's start with recapping championship weekend and the Seattle Seahawks and the New England Patriots, as both of these teams have made the playoffs or have made the Super Bowl and now are competing for a Super Bowl title. Both these teams met in the Super Bowl, by the way. They met back in 2014. That was the last time the Patriots or the Seahawks were in the Super Bowl, was 2014. Seattle lost that game on Pete Carroll's just stupidity and not wanting to give the ball to Marshawn Lynch down at the 1-yard line. And it ended up being an interception. Malcolm Butler with the game-winning INT. And from that moment on, the Patriots went on to win 2 more Super Bowl titles in the Patriots organization under Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. But recapping this championship weekend, the Rams and the Broncos, and I talked about this in our last show, in our last episode. If you want to find that on the description or on the channel. But I talked about this last week, or not last week. I talked about this on our last episode. Is I had no chance. There was no chance Denver was winning this game. And I'm going to start there with the Denver Broncos. Denver really had no shot. They really had no shot in this game. Jared Stidham was kind of their only hope to really play well. He had to have a perfect game, and he didn't, and he struggled. And so now, looking at the Broncos, for the offseason, they're going to have to hope that Bo Nix is healthy and he's ready to go by next season. But I even said, too, if they had Bo Nix and Bo Nix was healthy, I think Denver wins this game. And I think they win it going away. I don't think this is relatively a close matchup. I think this is relatively a blowout matchup, and I think we're talking about the Broncos in the Super Bowl here instead of the Patriots. But just a rough day. Sean Payton, a lot of turnovers in this game. It was a sloppy game. The snow being a big factor late in the game, and just Denver could not move the ball. And it's tough. It's tough for the Broncos because you look at how incredible of a run they had this year. They were the 1 seed, made it all the way to the AFC Championship game, lose to the Patriots, and lose at your building. That's even tougher. And what I think is even crazier about this is the ramifications that happened afterwards. I mean, Sean Payton fired his offensive coordinator, Joe Lombardi, who, might I add, was the OC when he was with the Saints. It's a pretty good OC. These guys go back. So the fact that Sean Payton fired him and then promoted Davis Webb to OC is going to be very interesting on how this offense is going to be run. But I was not surprised in the least to see this game be so bad of a game. Now, what I wasn't really surprised by was the fact that this game was low scoring. I mean, Denver's defense, they've been stellar all year. I talked about it at the beginning of the season. I thought they were going to be a scary defense right from the jump. I thought with the additions of Dre Greenlaw and Teliona Ufunga that this team could be a really good team on the defensive side. And they were. I mean, they legitimately were. They were not a team to be trifled with. Their defense was elite. Their offense, somewhat good. But, these things happen. These things happen for Denver, and they lose. And now they're out of the playoffs, and now they're going to have to sit at home while New England potentially goes to a Super Bowl title. And it's good for it's good for Denver. Now, I will look on the other side of this with New England. New England capitalized, and New England capitalized in a big way. They capitalized and they were able to take advantage of the mistakes that Denver had. Even though the box score says 10-7, the Patriots were still able to get 10 points and hold the Broncos to just 7. And I think you look at it too, if Denver, I said it again, if Denver had Bo Nix in this game, like, this is a different story. This is clearly a different story we're talking about. It's not one that we're sitting here saying, the Patriots won because of the snow and because of the turnovers. It's a game where we're saying, well, Patriots did all they could and they couldn't get it done. This game, however, Mike Vrabel and this crew, they just got up on a lead and just played the whole game just ahead of the sticks of the Broncos. And especially when the snow rolled in, it really wasn't much of a contest at that point for Denver. They just had to hope that they were able to get in good field position and hope that they can get a turnover, which they had several of them in that game and couldn't capitalize. So New England moving on. They're going to the Super Bowl. Patriots, once again, you talk about a franchise that has been to the Super Bowl so many times. This Patriot franchise has been to the Super Bowl the most times out of any team in NFL history. And they started their run in 85 when they went. They've been to the Super Bowl in 85, in 96, in 2001, 2003, 2004, 2014. Or actually, no, that's not true. Not 2014. 2007, 2011, 2014, 2016, and then 2017 and 2018. Okay? 10 times, count them. 10 times this Patriots team's been to the Super Bowl. And I'll talk more about them here too. But I think if you're the Patriots, you have to give credit to what they've done, and what Mike Vrabel's done over the season, especially in this game. They didn't really have to do much. They just had to really control the game, really control the clock, just make sure that you get the right turnovers and stuff. And that's pretty much it. Simple as that. So I really don't have much to say on this game because it was relatively a low scoring game. And I go back to it again. If Denver had Bo Nix, this would have been the one game on Championship Sunday that we're talking about as a blowout. I truly think that this would have been a blowout. I don't think Vrabes and the Pats would have been able to keep up with Bo Nix and that offense. I just think it would have been just a boat race. And the Broncos defense wouldn't have had to kind of play, kind of hold their own in this game. So not much really to say there on the AFC front. Now, the NFC front, however, man, it was wild. It was very wild indeed because Seattle's going back to the Super Bowl. And I talked about this, a couple weeks ago in our last episode, our championship weekend. But this Seahawks team really kind of had a nice road to the Super Bowl. They got the 1 seed. They played the 49ers, who were beaten and bruised. You play a Rams team with Matthew Stafford, who had the game of his life. And one big mistake in this game. And I said this before the NFC Championship game. I said, you have one mistake. It's going to take one mistake, one bad play here, one bad play there for this game to completely flip on its head. And completely flip on its head. And I gotta give it to them. I gotta give it to this game. It was a high scoring game, but it really took one play before the doors were blown open. And it was that muffed punt. That muffed punt that happened for the Rams, that costed them a huge opportunity to try and capitalize and get some points. But because of that, they gave it back to Seattle, and Seattle was able to double up. Now, let's say if the Rams don't blow this game. Let's say that muff punt doesn't happen. There's also other factors in this game too. The muff punt is one of them, but you also have the fourth down in Seattle territory. You're going for the win, and you're going for the win, and Stafford puts a perfect ball on Cody Parkinson. No penalty gets called. For that, it costed them the game. You just have that, but you also have opportunities missed by the Rams. I mean, Stafford, because keep in mind too, looking at the beginning of that last drive that the Rams had, the quote unquote last drive, they started that drive at their own 5. And they were able to go down and walk down and get to Seattle's 8 and couldn't punch it in. I mean, if I'm looking back on the Rams here, and if I'm looking back at this game, and for Sean McVay especially, because we'll talk more about the futures for a lot of these teams, because we're going to do a whole division preview or division recap and stuff, and an offseason recap. But I will say this, if I'm Sean McVay, I'm feeling sick to my stomach after that game, because Matthew Stafford played one hell of a game. And he played better than any quarterback that I had seen, play in a conference championship game, where he was just lights out. He was just lights out in this game. And the one thing that I think will cost Matthew Stafford a chance at getting that second ring, and maybe a chance at not, getting 2 rings and putting himself in a rare territory here, is the fact that they went for that fourth down and they didn't convert, and they lost. They lost by 4. But Matthew Stafford played his butt off, 22 of 35, 3 touchdowns, 374 yards. He played a phenomenal game, and I feel bad for Sean McVay and the squad, because they had a really good run. And I picked this Rams team to make the Super Bowl. I picked them to make the Super Bowl, and I picked them because the way that their offense had been just rolling up to this point. They had been rolling up to this point. The only loss that they had was to the Seahawks late in the season. It costed them the number 1 seed in the NFC. And now here we go again, back in Seattle. They can't close the deal again. And they had a chance to do it again. And so, yeah, Sean McVay is going to have to take a look in the mirror at this one, or have to sleep at night thinking about, man, I had an opportunity to go to the Super Bowl, and I just missed it by 1 or 2 plays. Missed it by that much. So, tough break for the Rams. Now, for Seattle, they played on the same side. Seattle played a really good game. And this has been the thing that I've seen from Mike McDonald. When, and I'll talk about this in our Super Bowl preview, but with the Seahawks, I just think that you look at it, this game, this is a really good, this is just basically a test of what they've done all season, where they've taken care of business. Their quarterback makes a few throws. The defense gets a couple plays here and there. You establish the run with Kenneth Walker, and you get the job done when it matters the most. Seattle did that in this game. They were able to come in, capitalize on the turnovers, the muff punt, be able to shut down, be able to take care of the game when it matters, when you finish, with the finish of that fourth down. And on top of that, too, you were able to get, back to the Super Bowl. And just really a true testament to what the Seahawks have done all season. And their job's not done. Their job's not done, Seahawks fans, which brings me into the segue into our next part, the Super Bowl. Let's talk about our Super Bowl preview here. And let's start with the Seattle Seahawks because I want to talk a little bit about Seattle. And I might get a bit on a rant with this. And actually, well, yeah, let's jump back in. I'll jump back into Seattle because I want to talk about New England because I have a little bit more to say about Seattle than I do New England. But let's talk about the New England Patriots for a sec here. The Patriots, what I've seen from New England this year has been really the remodeling of a dynasty, potential dynasty. As I said, New England has been to the Super Bowl 10 times, the most by any franchise in NFL history. Out of those 10 Super Bowls, they've won 6 of them, potentially going for a 7th. So 6-7. I couldn't resist. But they have a great quarterback in Drake May. Elliott Wolf, the front office this year, has been really good. And the one thing that and if there were things you look at the Patriots organization, how did New England get to the spot? There's a lot of things that you could say that got them to the spot. What is the biggest thing I think that they did was give Elliott Wolf the keys and let him run this free agency market. Let him run this offseason. And they did a phenomenal job. They were phenomenal right from the jump this offseason. They went out. They got Milton Williams. They also made a couple moves. They get Milton Williams. You get Stephon Diggs over from Houston. You go out on top of that in the draft. You get Will Campbell. You add Travion Henderson. You get Kyle Williams. You have another wide receiver, and you retool that offensive line. You retool that defense, and this Patriots team is back to being one of the top teams in the NFL. And I know people are going to hate when I say this, but the NFL is good when the Patriots are around. Like, the NFL needs that, like, evil empire brand. And New England has that evil empire brand. The evil empire brand was the Dallas Cowboys for the longest time. That evil empire brand is now the New England Patriots. When they are competitive, it is must-see football to watch them lose. You hate when they win. You love it when they lose. That's the Patriots. Mike Vrabel, also, too, the head coach for this team, running this ship. He's done a phenomenal job. And give credit to Mike Vrabel. He knows how to get the job done with his staff. You know, bringing in Josh McDaniels, giving Drake May a really solid offensive coordinator to conduct this offense. I think that was very smart. Then also, too, you look at how Drake May has played. I mean, Drake May is having an MVP-like season. I'm very curious how the NFL honors are going to go, but he might win MVP this year. And that's going to be tough to beat with Stafford and the way that Matthew Stafford dominated down the stretch of the season. It's going to be very hard to top. But Drake May is in a very unique class of his, very good class of his own. I mean, he's in a very, top line class of his own. He finished the year in passing this year in the postseason. Well, in the postseason, he was 4th in passing yards. You also look, though, in the regular season, he was 4th in passing yards. But the one thing the big stat about Drake May, though, is his passing touchdowns. He skyrocketed up from passing touchdowns this year. His numbers skyrocketed. And you look at, and I'll just even look it up and looking at the numbers. Last year when he was a rookie, he only played 13 games. He did not start the first 4 games of the season. But he had 2,200 pass yards. He averaged 6.7 yards per attempt. Oh, goodness. He had 15 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. with a quarterback rating of 88.1. Now, take into effect that last year he didn't have Mike Vrabel. He also didn't have Josh McDaniels. Enter Mike Vrabel. He played 17 games, full regular season. He had 4,300 yards, almost 4,400 yards passing, 8.9 yards per pass attempt, 31 touchdowns to 8 interceptions, with a 113.5 quarterback or passer rating. That is enough to get you an MVP vote, or votes for that matter. Like, he absolutely balled out of his mind this year. And not only did he ball out of his mind, but you look at the schedule that he was given, you look at the talent that he was given, it to me just signaled that this is the perfect year. This is kind of another one of those, runs that where a team has a bad schedule, like they play fourth place competition level, and they become a really good team over the season. We've seen this before. We've seen this with the Niners. This is how the Niners got to be so good and how they got to be relevant again. So it would not surprise me if this is the case for New England. They right from the jump this offseason. I mean, I go back to it again. Right from the jump this offseason, they came out guns blazing. They just loaded this team up with talent for Drake May, and then they loaded this team up for talent on the defensive side, and they said, all right, let's see what we got. And they're in the Super Bowl. That's pretty good. Pretty freaking good job. And one last thing, too, before we jump into Seattle. The man who's been the catalyst of all this, who's been the front runner, who's been the guy that has been leading the show, is Robert Kraft, who, by the way, should have got a first ballot or at least a Pro Football Hall of Fame nomination this year. He deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Whether you hate that, whether you hate all the stuff that's gone on with him, think football-wise for a sec. If it wasn't for Robert Kraft, if it wasn't for Robert Kraft, we might have not had Bill Belichick. We might have, because he came in at the time too. With Robert Kraft, he came into the time when Bill Parcells was the head coach of this team, and him and Parcells butted heads, and it led to a little bit of irrelevancy. And then, Parcells went out, got Bill Belichick, and the rest was history. If he doesn't make that move, this team might not be in the Hall of Fame. And I give Robert Kraft all the credit in the world for making that risk and firing DeMeco Ryans, which was a tough move because he is a former Patriot. Or not DeMeco Ryans. Gerard Mayo. Sorry. DeMeco Ryans is in Houston. That's how long of a week this has been and how busy I've been. But letting go of Gerard Mayo and saying we're going to go get Mike Vrabel, making that change is necessary. He's made those necessary changes to keep this team afloat. And whether you like it or not, whether the voters like it or not, he should have been in Canton along with Bill Belichick. Now, yes, I know people are going to have their gripes and their groans, but he should have been in Canton. Should have been in Canton. End of story. That's my thoughts on this Patriot team. He's been, and it starts with Robert Kraft. If Kraft doesn't make that move and fire Mayo and bring in Mike Vrabel, this is a different story. Very much different story. Now we'll segue to our other different story. The team from the NFC, the Seattle Seahawks, which, holy cow, Seattle. I got to put my glasses on for this because I have a lot to talk about with Seattle, because I have been one of the more bigger Seahawks people over the last decade. when they had their run, they've had runs. When they had their run with Mike Holmgren to a Super Bowl, when they had their run with Pete Carroll to 2 Super Bowls and won one of them. When the organization just kind of, was middling, it wasn't, they weren't as good, but they're still, decently good. They won games. I look at this Seahawks team this year. It was really just a test of, can you compete in the NFC West? And Seattle said yes. When I had them, and look at here for this one, when I had them projected, I didn't have Seattle winning this division. Did not have them winning this division. I had the Rams really kind of sticking it out and winning the NFC West. I thought that they were going to close the deal. I also had the Niners winning this division and closing the deal. Seattle somehow this season just pushed all the right buttons. And the guy who pushed all the right buttons to make this thing happen, or 2 guys to make all this thing happen, were John Schneider and Mike Macdonald. And I'm going to talk about John Schneider here. John Schneider has been down this road before. He's been to 2 Super Bowls as general manager of the Seahawks. Now he's going to his 3rd. He's in a rare class right now because not many people who are on one team can go to a Super Bowl with different groups. In fact, let me phrase that. Nobody has ever done that. John Schneider is the first GM in NFL history to reach multiple Super Bowls with the same organization while having a different head coach and no players from the previous Super Bowl team. That is an NFL stat. No coach or no GM has done that. John Schneider's done it with Pete Carroll. He's done that with Mike Macdonald now. 2 completely different rosters, 2 completely different teams. You have the first team with Pete Carroll, the Legion of Boom. They're going to run the ball with Marshawn Lynch, and then they're going to go for the deep ball with Russell Wilson. They're going to have all these guys in Doug Baldwin, Jermaine Kearse, Golden Tate. You're going to use that talent. And it worked. Got him to a first Super Bowl. Now, here we go. Fast forward a decade later. And John Schneider, completely different team, completely different roster. You have guys like Sam Darnold, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet in the running game. Then you look at the defense too. The defense, who has some no-name players. Literally, I do not know a lot of these players on the Seattle Seahawks defense. But, man, he does a phenomenal job at drafting. And a little bit of a brag, but he comes from the Ted Thompson pool, and he comes from the Ron Wolf pool all the way back to when he started his time in Green Bay. And John Schneider, I know I've hated on him because I've said too, if you're the ownership, you need to fire him. If I'm the ownership, man, I don't know how you don't fire him or how you won't fire him. You shouldn't. He has got this team to another Super Bowl. He's got them at an all-worldly level. He's done what I just, many say, he's done what I think nobody could ever do. Nobody. And that's what's really impressive by this. It's really impressive. Now, what's also really impressive is the coach, Mike Macdonald. He has done a phenomenal job this year in his second year as the Seahawks head coach. Seattle, I go back 2 years ago to when I saw the Mike Macdonald hire. When they hired Mike Macdonald, the biggest thing that I had in my mind was this was a good hire. Not only because, it's a hire that gets Pete Carroll out of Seattle, which I thought they let him stay way too long. And it took them a bit to get themselves back to being competitive. But it also brings in a fresh new mind. It brings a guy who brings new ideas and a guy who can restore the defense to an elite level. And you look at his first 2 years here, they've been really dominant on the defensive side. And now the offensive side with Clint Kubiak, who, by the way, has a head coaching job now, is, turn this Seahawks team in from 1 year to where they missed the playoffs. They didn't even make the playoffs last year to they finished the year 16-3. And they're playing for a Super Bowl championship. And also, too, I just want to also go and look at how dominant this team has been. This Seattle team has been. You look at how dominant the Seattle Seahawks team has been. So the Seattle Seahawks 13-3. This is a tweet from Bryce McGrow at NFL Compo on Twitter. The Seahawks are 16-3 this year. There are 3 losses: the 49ers, the Buccaneers, and the Rams. And in their 3 losses, they only lost by a combined 9 points. That means every game they lost by 3. Really, really impressive work from what Mike Macdonald has done. And really what they, has been a test of, this season for Seattle. And then you look at who's running the show at the quarterback position, Sam Darnold, which there's so many things I could even talk about there because he's the first quarterback in that incredible 2018 draft class to get to a Super Bowl. I mean, you have Josh Rosen, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield. You also, Josh Rosen, who's not even in the NFL anymore, but Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield, those guys, are really good quarterbacks. And Sam Darnold beat all of them to get to a Super Bowl. And I love Sam Darnold. I love Sam Darnold. I've been a big Sam Darnold believer. I thought he was cheated out, and I've said this. I thought he was cheated out of a good career to start his career. I thought that the teams that he was on did him a disservice to his career. The New York Jets and the Carolina Panthers. And I've said, both those teams, relatively with their organizations, they have struggled for years to keep that organization consistent. The Jets longer, because you look at when they drafted Sam Darnold, he really didn't have much around him. And oh yeah, by the way, he had Adam Gase as his head coach. Like, that's not a recipe for success for anybody, especially a Jets coach. And then he goes to Carolina. He has Matt Rule. And Matt Rule, and mind you, this is after Carolina traded for him from the Jets. And this is after, too, they just got Baker Mayfield. And they bring Baker Mayfield in. They bring Sam Darnold in. And Sam Darnold, dude, was a disaster. And not his fault entirely. I think the organization didn't do him justice at the quarterback position. I think they also didn't do Baker Mayfield justice at the quarterback position because they had no talent around him. Mind you, remember this. They had DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey on their roster, and they kicked both those guys out the door and they traded both of them away while he was there. Okay? While he was there, they let their leading rusher and their leading pass catcher walk out the door. Okay? Not ideal for a quarterback who's trying to be successful in the NFL. But the story of Sam Darnold gets very interesting because he goes from a guy who had 2 bad stops, with 2 teams, a team that he drafted that never really gave him a shot, and then another team that traded for him that also never really gave him a shot. He goes to San Francisco, and I think it could have been the best decision of his life, of his career. Because if he doesn't go to San Francisco, he doesn't end up in Minnesota. He doesn't end up, taking the starting job from J.J. McCarthy, who they were really on board with. And getting that Vikings team to 14 wins, which was impressive given the fact of how bad that roster was. I mean, that Minnesota Vikings roster was awful. And he turned that roster, along with Kevin O'Connell, into something magical to where they're in the playoffs and, they're in the playoffs, they're playing a playoff game and such and such. I give credit to Sam Darnold because after that, he goes to Seattle. He was the only quarterback that got a multi-year deal. Remember at the beginning of the season, when we talked about this in August, he was the only quarterback that got a multi-year deal out of any quarterback in free agency. And it paid off. Oh, yeah, it paid off. Because now Sam Darnold's playing for a Super Bowl championship. And this is something that I did not expect. Like, I legitimately did not expect I did not expect Sam Darnold to be in this spot. But I rooted for him because, I thought he was one of those guys that was a really good quarterback that just got put in a bad situation, and he was able to make the most of it. Same thing with Baker Mayfield. Got put in a bad situation in Cleveland, and then they let him go. He gets into a great situation, or same thing, again, too. Went to the Panthers, bad situation there, and then goes to the Rams, makes something of himself, and then goes to the Bucs and is able to come up with, somewhat of a starting job. And I think for Sam Darnold, this is his chance. Like, this is his opportunity to go and win a Super Bowl. And this Seahawks team been special all year. Been very, very special all year. So, my final prediction. Let's break it down. Let's get to the final stop here on our show. Final prediction time. Who do I think is going to win this game? Who do I think is going to win this Super Bowl? To be honest, I mean, when I look at both of these teams and I look at Seattle, I think that Seattle, really what they've done all year has been just a test of we're not going to, we're going to play our game. Same thing with New England. And same thing with Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel, both these teams kind of want to play their game. Mike Vrabel runs more of the short passing game, short to intermediate passing game, and then they'll take the occasional deep shot. With Clint Kubiak, we're going to run the ball. We're going to run wide. We're going to run that wide zone offense. We're going to get it to our wide receivers if necessary. We're going to target the middle of the field, and we're going to take the big shot on you, and you're not going to expect it. Well, let me phrase that. You're going to expect it, and it's going to be coming at you pretty quickly here. But I just think if I'm picking this game, if I'm picking whoever wins this game, I got to go with the Seattle Seahawks for my Super Bowl prediction. My final prediction is give me Seattle in this game. I think when you look at Seattle and you look at New England's really had a case of the bad schedule, a case of the bad schedule. They're going to win off their bad schedule. They're going to get good in the playoffs. They're going to play the right teams at the right time and get to the Super Bowl that way. The same thing with Seattle. They're going to, Seattle, actually, I should say a little bit tougher. They had to literally, you look at Seattle, they had to beat their own division 3 times. 2 teams in their division 3 times. They had to play the Niners, who they beat a second time, the Rams, who they beat a second time, and they had to beat them a third time in playoff games this year. And honestly, what I've seen from Seattle this year is just, especially in this postseason, has just been nothing short of dominance. I mean, they are a team with Mike Macdonald that I think if you're Mike Macdonald, you could scheme up some really tough defenses and some really tough formations for Drake May. The other thing is, too, is if you get Kenneth Walker going early in this ground game, New England's going to have a tough time stopping the running game. And then it leads to Sam Darnold going in the passing game. So I think because of that, I got Seattle winning this one. And I got Seattle winning this game by 7. I think New England's going to keep this close. I don't think this is going to be a blowout, but I do think this game is going to be relatively close. I don't see how you can't keep this game close if you're New England. And if you're Mike Vrabel is not going to roll over easily. He's going to have his team ready to go. He's going to get this team ready to go, give the other team a can of whoop ass. So give me Seattle for this one. Seahawks are going to win, and they're going to be Super Bowl champions. They're going to win their second Super Bowl title in the team's history. And with that does it for us here on another edition of Snap the Pigskin. Watch us at youtube.com/snapthepigskin or listen wherever you get your podcast. Keep in mind, too, we are going to be taking a little bit of a hiatus, a little bit of a break, just to, I got to catch my bearings a bit here and with all the stuff that's going on. And when I come back on, we're going to break down the offseason and go into our offseason previews and talk about all the divisions, all the teams that happened, that happened here and there. And then after that, it's going to be draft combine season. And as we get closer to our season finale. So stay tuned with us. I hope wherever you are watching the Super Bowl is going to be fun. And with that, I'm Noah Clark. This has been another edition of Snap the Pigskin.